Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Craig Burrell, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Air Force is Warrant Officer Jeff Banning. We warmly welcome the family of Private John Sidney Wells, whose story will be told shortly. We are honoured to acknowledge the winners of the National History Challenge for 2018, who are joining us this evening. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria, and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by family and visitors to the memorial. Please stand and join in singing the national anthem. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn their loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Private John Wells. John Wells, known as Sydney, was born on the 24th of April 1895 to John and Joanna Wells at the family property of Waterloo in Bettrick, New South Wales. He had two older brothers, Harold and Charles, two older sisters, Dora and Ada, and a younger sister, Leela. His father had selected land in the area in the early 1880s and farmed with some success. The elder John Wells was highly respected in the region, acting for several years as councillor of the Narrabri Shire and becoming vice president of the Farmers and Settlers Association before retiring to nearby Temora. Sydney Wells attended Bettrick Public School and was a farmer when war was declared. He enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force at Cootamundra in May 1916, just a few weeks after turning 21 years old. After a period of training in Australia, Wells left Sydney on board the troop ship Ceramic in October, with reinforcements to the 2nd Battalion. He underwent a further period of training in England before being sent to join the rest of his battalion on the Western Front in April 1917. The 2nd Battalion had been part of a force that followed up the German retreat to the Hindenburg Line earlier in 1917. The day before Private Wells joined it in the field, the battalion had been withdrawn from the front line after fierce fighting near the French village of Bullecourt. Wells went to work with the rest of the battalion, improving billets and roads in the back lines. On the 15th of April, the 2nd Battalion was called back to the front lines, entering near the village of Airmere. Their spell in the front line was quiet, although the battalion suffered a few casualties, probably from artillery fire. On the 21st of April 1917, Private John Sydney Wells was one of 3 men killed in action. Little is known of the exact manner of his death. Back home, a local newspaper reported that the sad news was broken to the family by Reverend Arthur Phillips. The Defence Department wired him to transmit the news to the bereaved family, for whom much sympathy is felt. Wells was buried in the Airmere British Cemetery under the epitaph requested by his parents, in memory of the beloved son of Mr. and Mrs. Wells of Temora. Duty done. John Sydney Wells was 22 years old. His name is listed on the roll of honour to my right, amongst almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. His photograph is displayed besides the pool of reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private John Sydney Wells, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world. They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them. lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Poziere or in the low scrub at Gallipoli with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the last post ceremony. Thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and good evening.